This one goes out to the Artcasters. Ooh, Artcaster! I say you're casting your spell, Artcasters. Casting your spell. Ooh, you're gonna cast that spell. Strike a hell. Wow! Ooh. Aye, aye. Aye, aye. Aye, aye.
Okay, I've got to say that watching Laurie's thumbnail
I was not
during that
prepared
intro,
for that at all.
That is Jim Lujan and Axl Rose.
so like as we're playing that, like we get these little like 1-inch tall thumbnails of what our cameras are doing at the bottom, and I wish I had recorded a reaction because it was shock, and then it was just confusion, and it was humor. It was great. It was
And
good
then it
reaction.
was, yeah, more.
now I'm into it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So we didn't forget our intro this time. Sometimes we forget it, but anyway. So we are back live. This is the Artcasters episode. What is it? 406.
Woo!
And we have a returning guest. I think this is our third time on the show. And we'll get to her in just a minute. But we're going to do what we always do and go around the virtual room, introduce ourselves, talk about anything that we have going on. And so I will kick that off. And so this is my channel. So if you're on here, when you're done here, you can also check out some of my videos. I've been doing all kinds of cool stuff, taking like all kinds of retro vintage stuff, you know, not toys, but like printed ephemera and things like that, or just cool stuff from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and kind of figuring out how it works, reverse engineering it and recreating it and adding my own kind of spin to it. That's kind of fun. Plus, I've got tons of information on creating comics if you're a comic creator on this channel. In addition to that, I have a website called circworks.com where you can go and you can get digital tools that will help you if you're a comic creator, and my own prints and things like that. So a lot of stuff there. And then I do have a show coming up, not this weekend, but the next weekend. It's called the Arizona Comic Art Fest, and I'll be there with Gary Hodges and also Scott Lost and Keith. What's Keith's last name? Is it
Foster?
Foster, yes, Keith Foster from the Making Comics podcast. So that's in Arizona. It's like a one-day show, but it's comic centric. It's just focused on comics. So if you're into comics and you happen to be in the area, definitely check that out. And just Google Arizona Comic Art Fest and you'll find out about it. And if you want to exhibit there, I think they said they still have a couple tables left. So get on that quick if you want to do that. So that's, like I said, a week from this Saturday. So that's what I got going on. What about you, Corey?
Well, you know how most people don't like to look stupid in public? I'm doing the opposite of that. So what you want to do is you want to go to coreykerr.com/email and jump on the email newsletter, because I'm writing a novel one scene at a time, out of order, and I am sharing those scenes without any editing and just totally live. It's as close to a stream of consciousness writing situation that you can get. And if you don't want to read it, I'm doing like videos where I read it, and I am not a professional narrator. So I think that might be the worst pitch for anything I've ever done. And so, yeah, I've got 2 of them done already. You can see them right over here. So you've got we got the loop hacking explanation and whatever
I've only
else.
seen the first one, so.
Yeah, I think Google suppressed the second one a little bit because it didn't get the same numbers, and a lot of my subscribers aren't seeing it. But
yeah,
anyway,
I didn't see the second either. Yeah,
I gotta say,
well,
this is the reason why I come on this show.
Yeah,
best ideas.
Yeah. So if you want to see, that, it's an interesting story, I think. So time is breaking down, and people are becoming unmoored from the present, and they slip forward or back in time, and some people are using that to their advantage. The second scene, which apparently nobody has read yet, because it hasn't showed up in their email or whatever, it's out there. But the second scene, I talk about how there's a new type of terrorist that is using time slipping to like cause disinformation campaigns and disrupt scientific advancement. And the first one is
a fiction story, right?
Yeah.
It is
It had been moved to
yeah, it's loose.
nonfiction.
Yeah, it's loosely based in reality, but except for the fiction parts. But the but the first scene that I wrote is about a woman punching a baby in the face in a public cafe. So if you want to see what I'm talking about, you can check that out. Also, I'm doing a series of kind of visual explanations of like how images work and how to make those better. My next one's going to be on visual or on value contrast. So check out the ones I've done on kind of deconstructing the components of images and how that type of stuff on my YouTube channel. But that's all in the email newsletter that is scrolling across the bottom.
It's interesting, Corey, because I think there's a Stephen King short story where this guy is trying to make this deal with somebody, and you don't really know what it is. And spoiler at the end, in order to get this money, it's like a whole bunch of money or a certain amount of money. It's kind of, would you do this or not? But in the end, it was like what the guy wanted them to do was punch a baby. So
this is a little less nefarious.
Yeah,
she's helping the baby.
Yeah, no.
Punching the baby by punching it in the face.
Well,
It's very important in this story that you punch old people and babies. It's a key plot point. You'll have to read that first scene
I'll
to
just
understand
have to
why.
read it myself.
it's all out of love. Trust me. If you listen to it, you'll
I
get it.
love you. That's how it goes in this place.
Yeah.
All
that's how we do it.
right. Josh, what's going on in your world?
All right. Other than trying to normalize the act of punching babies,
Yeah.
just kidding. So you guys should read what Corey's doing. It's really cool. Also, before I get going, I do want to mention I just heard Jim during that intro, the clip that he made for us. It's like the first time I heard it. There's a little section where he does a little bass riff solo, and I hadn't heard that before, and it's kind of amazing. So thanks again to Jim for doing that. Yeah, you can check out Jacob's Apartment or Two Stories, my two graphic novels at Amazon or bookstores everywhere. Jacob's Apartment is kind of like if you took Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, put it in a blender with Ghost World, and wanted a good doomed romance story. That's Jacob's Apartment. And then Two Stories is a black and white story that's split into two different styles. One kind of really loosely cartoony, one more realistic, exploring the topics of faith and mental illness and the corruption of religious institutions. So yeah, so if those sound interesting, pick them up and let me know what you guys think. Yeah, and also I stream on YouTube at Joshua Kimball. So yeah.
All right, so next we're going to get to our guest Laurie, and before we do, I just want to mention she's going to talk about this new Kickstarter she's got going on right now.
Yeah.
But just to let everyone know that there is a link in the description of this video, so you can click on that link and go directly to it. So Laurie, we've had you on a couple times. You talked about Path of the Pale Rider, and now you've got a collection coming out it's live on Kickstarter. So I assume that's what you're going to promote, but I don't know. But I'll leave that up to you.
I'm also promoting punching babies in the face tonight. We've been sponsored by Punch a Baby. Well, first, before I say anything about my project, I wanted to say congratulations to you guys who just recently did your 400th episode, which is insane. I'm just brand new at this podcasting thing. I have a show, and we got to like 100 episodes. I felt proud of myself. But you guys have 400 episodes, which is amazing. So I just want to say congrats to you guys. I did a short little thing for you. Hopefully it was entertaining because I'm crazy. So it was a lot of fun to do. So
It was awesome.
But yeah, I'm here talking, of course, about Path of the Pale Rider, the world where death has been broken. Your body dies, but your soul doesn't leave, and you get to rot, and you get to experience it, and it's a bad day. We finished issue number 4, and we are kickstarting for printing trade paperbacks. The art's already complete, so it's not, a whole lot to do except for print the books. And Gary's in there. Gary's actually been a backer since our first issue, so thank you so much, Gary, for coming along for my entire journey. And it's been a journey, right? It's, when you are in something for this long and longer, it evolves, it changes, and it becomes something else. So always a good time. It's always good to have the people with you from the beginning too. So I appreciate you. So what do you want me to talk about first? I don't know.
Well, one of the, and we can get into this. We'll get into this as the topic, but that one of the reasons why I really enjoy having you on, because you are just a master of promoting your, whatever Kickstarter. Or at this point, we're talking about your Kickstarter, but the way you, because I mean, and Laurie just came from another podcast or live stream or something before this.
This is actually my 4th podcast of the day.
Of the day, that's the day, and
Oh,
she has a 30-day. I assume it's 30-day Kickstarter, which I assume you're probably trying to get all those days scheduled. So especially we're still sort of in the beginning of the campaign, but then that's towards it's kind of that bathtub effect where you start up here, you kind of dive down, you go like this, and then you go back up towards the end. But in order to kind of boost that middle of that basin up, you gotta get a lot of promotion in the middle of your campaign and stuff, and you are just excellent at that. So I don't know, I guess I want to kind of dive in to find out, how do you find all these different podcasts and live streams and different, or whether it's Facebook groups, or I guess first let's start on what are the different avenues you do. And it seems I know about podcasts and things, but are there other avenues, and how do you search these out and make sure they're a good fit and everything?
So promoting in general, you don't stop. So if you have campaigns and you're going to have a campaign in the future, I might rotate between some of these different arms of marketing, but I try to do them all and switch them out. So you don't get burnt out, because there's only so many social media posts you can do before you just want to shoot yourself in the face, right? So when I'm Kickstartering, I will social media post. I will make store appearances and do shows. I was just at Texoma Comic-Con over the weekend, and I'm going to another show next weekend, which is Women in Comics in Watauga. So it's meeting the people where they want to be met, right?
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
Do you find that when you go to like a live event, it's harder to get conversion because you don't have that link? I mean, I guess you could have like QR codes and things like that, but I'm just wondering, like on a show like this, it's so easy to just go in the description, click on the link, and go to the Kickstarter. Whereas when you're live, it's a little more difficult. Although, like I said, there are things like QR codes and things like that. But what do you use to combat that, I guess?
Well, I have 2 things. I have an email sign-up list.
Okay.
So for the less tax savvy, just write down your email. I'll do all the work.
Yeah.
Right. And then for everybody else, I have a QR code. So I'll either have a QR code to the pre-launch if I'm not launched yet, or I'll have a QR code that's to the live campaign as well. A lot of times I will bring some of the merch with me. I was kind of showing these guys some of the things that I do. So I'll have some of the merch with me. I had these at Texoma, and we didn't launch until the next day, but people got to feel them, touch them, see them. And it's like, how do I get this? This is super cool. And then it was, we're launching this on Monday. All you have to do is put your email here, or, sign up for notification. These are available on the campaign tomorrow,
Now explain it. You talked a little bit about that. It's a really cool artifact there that you have. So explain to me how that came together.
It's kind of a funny story. I was scrolling on TikTok, as we do, and fell into book talk. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with fanfic.
Not so much. Oh, okay.
Corey, so fan fiction is when
fan fiction,
an author is writing in a title or IP that's not theirs. So they can't make any money. They can't sell anything. It's just free to everybody to read on the interwebs, right? But what happens is that people, if they want a physical copy, they learn how to bind books. So they print it themselves in what they call signatures or a type block. Okay. And then they actually bind it themselves. So I was watching people bind books, and I was like, people can't sell fan fiction, but I can sell mine because I own it. So I was like, I would love to learn how to bind books. So first thing I did is I ripped off the covers of my Harry Potter books that I've had for, decades. And I learned how to do it, made all the mistakes on those so that way I could make these. So these are black and white versions of the trade paperback. They're a mini size. And I do everything. I print the pages, cut, glue. I sew all the things together. So, like this red
That
one.
looks hardbound. Is that hardbound?
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you're stitching.
Hardbound.
You're stitching. That's not like a perfect bound glue.
Not,
You're saying you're
not a
stitching
glue bound.
signatures.
It's stitch bound. Like I'll show you what I like about these is because I'm personalizing them. So I don't know if you can see the red.
Yeah.
The red.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
So whatever the skull color is, the binding matches, and then I'm painting the edge of the.
Yeah,
paper.
I was gonna ask if you paint the edges or if you have some kind of special paper for that.
No, this is painted, and I could probably do HTV, but it's not quite thick enough to do like the metallic, and then there's some really what do they call it, ASMR, because it's all stuck together,
Yeah.
Oh,
and then you like
right.
break it apart, and it makes a really cool sound. The other things I did today, let's see, I was on So Wizard podcast this morning, and that was recorded. He's going to play it today. I did a Twitter space with my friends, the Zombie Bros, and I was just on Catch the Craze right before here. So that's where I was today.
Gary says, as a comparison to your schedule, that he does a single YouTuber podcast and then hides in the woods for 2 to 3 days afterwards. So.
Yeah.
Gary has a
Gary's-
great
Gary's
show.
the
I've been
opposite.
on his show. I like going on his show. We always have good talks. So all
So,
good things. So
what
I'm
about
making a bunch of these right now?
What about the foil? Is that something you do on the Cricut?
Yeah,
I'm trying
yeah.
to
I
figure
have
out
a
my
Cricut.
Cricut right now.
So I designed this myself, and then of course I cut out the silver on on one sheet, and then
Yeah.
I cut the skull out separately, and then iron them on. This is iron on.
So is that
there
like
is
a?
no
Oh,
dent.
it's an iron-on.
Only
Yeah.
decay. Yeah, because the cover is cloth. It's
That's
cloth.
Right. So you can do like the same type of technique as like a heat transfer on a T-shirt.
It's exactly what it is. It's HTV.
Ah,
I don't know if you
that's
noticed, but I got
beautiful.
the Morse code on here too. So it's
Yeah,
got
that's
US.
cool. That's cool.
Personally, it's just funny to me, What the heck? Josh, where'd you go? His picture's hilarious.
Yeah.
Hey, hello, Chase. Greetings. and salutations.
Sometimes Josh's dogs hear
Oh,
someone
Gotcha.
4 miles away and need to attack them, and so he steps out.
So
Okay.
anyway, I got a couple of these left on the campaign. They were flying, and then of course the pillow plushies were flying. So I think
Did you
there's,
show
like,
those off?
the pillow plushie.
Yeah.
So this is our unofficial mascot, the undead bear, Big James. He's on like all of our branding. I have hot sauce with Big James, hats, T-shirts, hoodies, like people keep asking for more Big James, so I just keep making it.
I
Because
love
that's
how
what I want.
I went to your Kickstarter campaign. I love how on there it says if you like, and one of the things it says if you like is
Cocaine
Cocaine Bear.
Yeah, we're like Book of Eli, Spaghetti Western, Walking Dead, and Cocaine Bear because
And
this
that's obviously
guy-
a new one because before the other campaigns didn't have that. But so when
Yeah.
you saw that, did you immediately say, "Oh, that's a good marketing. That's a good."
It's
When you
so
saw that
funny.
Cocaine Bear was coming out, like because you already had this character before.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Like issues 1 and 2 were out before Cocaine Bear dropped in the theater, and we actually had a Big James variant. Hold on, we made it into a sweatshirt, but it's a yellow cover with like a red background. It's beautiful, but look. So this cover of issue number 3 dropped the same day that the trailer dropped for
Yeah.
Cocaine Bear, and I was like, I couldn't have planned that any better.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is just such a cool thing. So I was like, sweatshirts it is. So we have T-shirts and sweatshirts of this. I got all sorts of cool merch. We have we just unlocked a poker card. So I just flipped a poker card that we're every 50 backers for every single campaign. We're building a 52 card deck. So we
Okay,
just did
I'm gonna
that.
have to because this is relevant, but it's gonna
Yes.
segue a little bit away from the marketing because
No, this is all marketing, dude.
one thing. Well, no, yeah, this is all. Yeah, it is still marketing, but my question is.
Oh, I was
One thing I try to avoid, one thing I try to do is make anything that I'm going to be shipping around the same size as the comic so I can ship it with. But you've got plushies, you've got hoodies, you've got these thicker books, you've got hot sauce.
the
how
hot
do
sauce is the hard ones.
Okay. Yeah,
It's like
especially like breakable things. I assume unless it's in plastic. I don't know, but.
Well, I actually 3D print a collectible bottle case for those.
Oh, wow.
And so I ship it. It's in plastic and it's pretty a snug fit, and that
Yeah.
helps kind of keep it intact. But I'll ship those in larger boxes. But most of this stuff, like this looks squishy, but they're vacuum sealed when I get them. So I took this one out to show, but they're flat.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So
Yeah.
It just depends on things. I have Funko Pops and other, like the people that get the more pricey tiers do get bigger boxes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But so those are more. You wouldn't do something like that as a stretch goal where everyone's going to get one of those things.
No,
Okay.
they get cool stuff. A lot of times we'll
Yeah.
do like PDF bundles. I have keychains. I have temporary tattoos, enamel pins, and of course our slice and dice event where people get to name a pumpkin or watermelon and pick a weapon of destruction, and then I destroy something on a live stream. I want to light it on fire first this time and then destroy it. That's the
Okay. I mean, and again, people take, if you're an independent comic creator, take notes. I mean, these are just, this is pretty much gold here as far as just, because this is kind of stuff that does really well on like social media or TikTok or whatever, that type of thing.
Get your fan base involved.
Yeah. Awesome. So kind of back to what we were talking about as far as seeking out the different places to market to that are going to be interested in the project that you're doing, mostly comic centric media podcast things.
Not necessarily. You can always look for podcasts or Facebook groups, Twitter groups that are in your genre.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I check off a lot of boxes. We're a Western, we're apocalypse fiction, we're horror.
Yeah.
I actively seek out and I put ads in like zombie groups. There's a bunch of zombie groups. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and a lot of times I ask questions. Like right now I'm doing these things called Grim Questions, where I have a little Grim Reaper and he's like has his hand out and he wants to know, if a hamburger still moved, would you eat it?
Yeah.
But it's based out of my world. So everybody's like, what do you mean? Is it full of maggots? I'm like, no, the meat still moves because the cow is undead. So when you grind it up, it still moves. You know what I mean? So it gets them thinking about how the world is different.
Right.
And then they get to interact and we have fun. But it was like, I had an undead, scantily clad woman. It was like, smash or no? Would you? She can remember your name and she's only slightly stinky. What do you think? I mean, it's a hamburger, but it's moving. And it'll move while it's in your stomach. I don't know. Zombie bugs was today, Polly. That's right. And it's like, would you burn them, eat them, or collect them and unleash them on your enemies? So it's like, undead bugs. They're gross, but what would you do?
I'm gonna retract my statement before, because one of the pieces of advice I usually give is don't just market to comic book creators, and probably not just, like you said, not just comic collectors either, even though that's a little better than just comic creators, but that broader, what's your genre, and like it's an excellent point about your comic, because it does cross so many different genres. So yeah.
Paula is drinking the worm while it's still moving out of the bottom of the bottle. It's still squirming in there. It's gross. But yeah, I think that's one way to kind of tap into a new audience, because a lot of times we are so oversaturated in the indie comic world. And it's like, especially me, it's like, oh, it's a zombie book. I don't care. Zombies have jumped the shark a long time ago. Nobody watches Walking Dead. But it's like
the same issue.
Right.
With my comic, yeah. But it's different, it's something that's...
But it's different because the point of view is different. Like, we changed how zombies function because it's still you in your body while you decay. And it's just, you lose your mind as it rots and it hits everybody differently. And the way that the world works when food is fundamentally changed because of the way death is broken. And, and then we talk about ethics and government overstep and corruption and conspiracy theories, it goes up, you know what I mean? Yeah. Then people get it. Right. But you have to still get your foot in the door, because otherwise I'm just another zombie book.
Right? Yeah. So what, I mean, in addition, so, I mean, I'm sure we all have kind of our own pitches, and you kind of gave your pitch in the beginning of the show, but what's the best way to kind of get that across, or is that something you have to kind of build on, that how it is different, from all the other zombie stuff out there? Yeah,
it's kind of like a sales pitch. I don't know if you are familiar with sales tactics, where you have like the certain type of closing,
like a log line, or
there's the what is it? I forget the name of it, but it's like you ask questions, you ask qualifying questions.
Mhm.
And so, like, for me, I start with, we're Book of Eli, Spaghetti Western, Walking Dead, and Cocaine Bear. And if
Right.
they go, oh, that's cool. And then I'm like, yeah. And then it's the next step. It's the elevator pitch.
Right.
It's Path of the Pale Rider. It's a world where death has been broken. Your body can die. Your soul doesn't leave. People, animals, plants, insects, we're all stuck here together. And we're following a cowboy who's trying to figure out the answer of what broke death. And then it's like, okay, that's different. That's an interesting take. And then it's like, okay. And then it's issue 1, this happens. Issue 2, this happens. Issue 3, issue 4. I got books on sale. They're buy 2, get 1 free. You know what I mean? Or they're buy 3, get the first one free. And then it becomes, slow baby steps towards that buy-in. So.
Yeah. And also, and I'm sure you do this as well, where you're engaged in the conversation. So you're looking to find out what's piquing their particular interest, and then you can kind of move them around to where you want to.
Yeah. I really like Westerns.
If somebody's got a shirt with a teddy bear. Oh, you like bears? Well, what about this one? And that type of thing. Yeah.
Oh, you really like Cocaine Bear? Let me flip you to the page where you can see Big James and all of his glory.
Exactly.
Oh, we have conspiracy theories. Oh, we have ASL. Oh, I write riddles. They're on the back of every issue. Look, this one, if you figure it out, you find a hidden video on YouTube or a phone number to call where you get to interact with the world. So it's, exactly what you said. It's trying to like feel what interests the person in front of you and to know when to stop too, because if they're just not going to buy, move on. It's not always going to be a yes. Sometimes it's just going to be a no, thank you. And it's like, okay, know when to stop talking and pitching because you're just wasting your time. Go find a new person to talk to.
Yeah. So what is your, when you are in the middle of a campaign, what is your typical, I guess, month look like? Or you could break it down into like a week or a day, maybe a day, however you want to break it down.
I'll go farther out than that, actually.
Okay.
So when I'm preparing a campaign, I want my pre-launch page set up 30 days prior to launch.
Okay.
So I can start funneling people to that, notify me upon launch to sign up. And I don't put a ton of stock in that, honestly. I want people to be there. It's usually the new people to campaign that are there, that are interested and want that reminder. I'm so active in my social media and with updates and communicating that right now my core backers they know because I'm telling them, and they're tuned into my Facebook, my podcast, my updates, my everything, right? So I had 75 people prior to launch, and that was now we're on day 4, and I have 50 backers on day 4. So that's pretty good turnaround, you know what I mean? And my conversion rate is about 20%. So that's pretty high for right now. And it'll change and evolve as we keep going. So anyway, so 30 days out, make sure you have that pre-launch, and you want to start telling people your intention. I'm going to launch on this day. So start building buzz and make sure you repeat that day and time so that way people get it in their mind, because you want them there when you launch. Because of course, I don't know if people understand Kickstarter, but that algorithm is so important. The sooner you hit your goal, Kickstarter pushes you towards the forefront. So they'll start recommending your project because it's funded.
Yeah.
So that's free advertising. You want that. So I also start booking podcasts about 30 to 45 days out. The better podcasts are usually booked 30 to 60 days out, unless there's a cancellation and they know you. Or like, you want to come on? Yes, I do. Usually you got to fight to get a spot on some of those. I was contacting some new ones, and they're like, we don't have an opening until August. And I was like, I don't care when it is, sign me up.
That's good. That's good advice. Always promote it. That's the thing. And that's the thing that I'm guilty of, is that, I just don't, when I'm creating, I'm not thinking of promoting at that time.
Yeah.
And, and that's, probably not
always be promoting. Well,
yeah.
I mean, I don't promote quite as hard when I'm not kickstarting, but I do communicate, like, here's where we are. Here's some art sneak peeks. Look at this cool merch that came in. Like, there's always something that you can talk about where your progress. So share it, because people want to know, and that also helps your retention, because if people know, like, she's doing everything that she can to get these books done, they're more likely to come back. So
yeah, it makes sense.
About a week or so before campaign, I try to book the shows that pre-record. So the reason why is I want to spend my time on podcasts that are live streaming for the most part. I mean, sometimes you're going to book stuff that's pre-recorded and they release when they release, but if they release like the next day or the week after, try to get those, in the beginning, so that way you're doubling yourself. Like, for example, I have a show that's I'm on tomorrow night, but I also did a pre-record that's also airing tomorrow night that I recorded last week before we launched, So in that case, I've already put in the time and it's airing while I'm live so that people watching the pre-record can go push the button and go to the campaign. And then I'm somewhere else duplicating my effort. You know what I mean? So I try to do that, but you got to have some forethought into that, like by keeping track of the list of podcasters that you're in contact with and whether they're live or pre-recorded, what days they record, all of that. That just takes time to put it together. I don't think too many people have that level of OCD that I do. Just try to book some podcasts. It's a poor Paul. He's just like, go away, Laurie, with your undead bugs. I don't want to think about eating them. They're gross. But yeah, I book I book podcasts from day one that we launch or before, all the way through the campaign. I don't take a break in the middle. I don't take a break at the end, because every day that you're out there, hopefully you're touching someone new that maybe hasn't seen you before. So for this campaign is 24 days. I'm doing about 30 podcasts in 24 days.
Wow.
So I stay busy.
Absolutely. Is what, in addition to podcasts, are you doing? And I know you're doing like social media posts and things like that. And you said like live shows as well. Is there anything else that?
Yes, I say hire people to do the things that you don't excel at, right? I suck at press kits and talking to people that are like magazines and 2D print, right? So there's the live streams. I'm good at the podcasting, but like putting together a press kit and taking the time to find all those people is not something that I want to spend a lot of time doing. So I hired Inked Marketing, and they're doing more social media and ads for me there, and they're also doing my press kit. And that's all I really needed them to do. I didn't want to, like, I'm used to building my own Kickstarter. I'm used to booking my podcast. I didn't need help in that area, but I just don't have the time to do some of these things. So I hired the marketing firm to kind of boost where I feel like I'm weak. So you can always spend ad dollars where you feel comfortable, whether it's Google ads, Facebook ads, TikTok ads, whatever. If you are not good at podcasting or setting up podcasts, there are publicists that can help you. The first time I ran a Kickstarter, I hired Jeff Haas, who's a publicist, and he was essential in my success on that first campaign, not knowing what I was doing, right? He got me on 34 shows. How do podcast results in sales, please? Usually if you are on a podcast where people are interested, like they're your audience, they're your market. So I go on horror podcasts, and I'm different. So a lot of times when I start talking about what we're doing, and the podcasters are gracious enough to put our link on the show, a lot of times I'll get backers while I'm live on the show, and it's great. It's great. It helps everybody see that there's backers, that are constantly coming, and it's great to find a new audience. So podcasting, I think, was essential for me. And that's one of the number one things I recommend to anybody who's trying to advertise and market their project.
Yeah, I was going to ask what gets you your best conversion, and also, kind of how you say you hire people to do some promotions and things, and you had mentioned paying for ads and things. I wonder how much of that, however you want to break it down, money or percentage, or as far as paying for ads and what kind of return you get on those.
I've done Facebook ads before and have got $0.
Okay.
I wasn't really seeing anything that way. I have not done Google ads. Google ads I would probably use to push people to my website so I can get more sales via my website for my shop. This is my first time using Inked Marketing, so they have their own what do they call it, vanity URL. So we can track these sales that come directly from their marketing. So it helps me make the decision to rehire them or just say no thank you next time, because I didn't really see a difference. And every campaign is going to be different. And their marketing, their audience that they're tapped into is different than mine, right? Because I've been cultivating this audience for 2 years now, but they're in a different place. They have a different market. So that's what I'm hoping to do, is to maybe cross over into the eyes that they see that I don't. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I can't really give sales numbers on my experience with Inked yet, because we were only 4 days into the campaign and I don't have hard numbers yet.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
But you mentioned that vanity URL, and that's something that
Mhm.
that anyone can set up too, and you can have
yeah.
different URLs for wherever you're posting it, so you can kind of figure out, like, you might get some bad information, like if anyone clicks on the link from this video, it's probably gonna say they got it from your Facebook, because that's where I got your link, because the one on YouTube, the one on Kickstarter was super long, so
Well, right.
I
And the only
saw
ones
your
I
tiny
care
URL
about,
and I just use that.
yeah, I mean, the only ones I care about is, I mean, like everything is from my push, unless
Right.
it comes from Inked.
Yeah.
And I also monetize my art team. So they get commission. They have
Yeah.
their own vanity
That's
URL. So if they push out a Path of the Pale Rider trade paperback, they get commission on the sales that show up from our Kickstarter.
That is actually pretty unique and brilliant, I think, to get buy-in from your artists. Because, like, you know, if I'm getting a cut or percentage of royalties or something like that, then I'm way more likely to promote a book I illustrated than if it's just, you know, if it's just pay per page and it's done. Then, like, I don't want to spend my time promoting. Like,
Right, why would
so
you?
I love
It's
that
an
idea of
incentive.
incentivizing. Yeah, that's brilliant.
So are your, like, artists and like, say you hire cover artists and things, do you try to, you know, get them, are they out there kind of promoting the book as well?
Cover
Or is it
artists, I
mostly-
don't do commission. As a variant artist, I kind of expect that coming in, because they're getting paid a premium for
Yeah,
a cover. So I'm only choosing the ones that not only can do fabulous art, but are willing to help market and push their audience into Path of the Pale Rider.
Yeah.
If they don't have much of a following, or I'm looking to see what kind of posts they're making and it's not much, I might opt for somebody else.
Yeah.
But my
makes a lot
own
of
team, I commission them, just so, like, if they're pushing the product out there, they have a little more incentive.
That's brilliant. I think that's a great idea. And
Now, do
actually,
they
it
do
kind of
it?
makes sense, because it makes it's kind of easier to promote a cover, weirdly enough, than, like,
It is.
interiors or something like that. So I think that actually just the logic there makes sense too. That's really smart.
Well,
That's
usually
interesting that the whole time we've been doing Artcasters, I think that's the first time I've
Really?
heard of a writer doing
Well, it's
that.
really
Yeah,
just
that's
it's
brilliant.
just affiliate marketing. I mean, every other industry uses it, so why don't we?
I know. I know. Yeah, that's
I do
great.
that at
That's just
cons
such a good
too.
idea.
Yeah.
So, like, Marco DeFio and I are both in Texas, close by each other.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we get asked to do, like, free comic book day, and he's at one store and I'm at another. And I'll give him a stack of books, and he gets commission for anything he sells.
That's great.
So it's just another way to get people involved in, because, I mean, like, he has his own stuff on his table too. So
Yeah.
I mean, if he gets, I've already paid him the page rate, so he is promoting his book with his art, and to follow our story and to show up later, so he continues to get paid, right? However, if he gets a little kickback for every book he sells, it's more likely that he sells my stuff too.
Yeah, and, like, honestly, it's a nice signal that you would that you appreciate the time of that. I just think that's great. That's brilliant. That's really cool.
Yeah, I remember. You know, I used to listen to a lot of podcasts on kickstarting and things like that. And that one of the things they mentioned was that one of the biggest section as far as, or categories as far as funding fairly high is dance, because usually it's like a community thing. So when you get, say, if you have a performance with like 15 dancers in it, you get each one of those dancers to promote this thing. I mean, the more people involved, the more people out there that are promoting this. So if you have a team of people, or if you're hiring different artists and things, if you can build on that, you know, we just had the guys from Gold Key Comics on, and, you know, they've got a number of of cover artists and things, and they're doing different shows and things to help kind of promote this one project. So that's another thing. If it's not just, if you're just not a solo operation, if you are hiring people or whatever, get those guys out there and have them promote your project as well. So
For sure.
The next thing I'm trying to do is to develop my team to also do podcasts.
Okay.
And then again, they can share their vanity URL on the podcast. So anything that is a sale based off of the podcast they do, they can get commission. But it's all about duplicating yourself. When you wear all the hats and you're responsible for doing all the things marketing wise, it would be really great if there was someone else that was also doing it at the same time.
Yeah.
And duplicate yourself and your mentality. So my editor, Rachel Bullock, would love to do more podcasts. She's just kind of new at it. So I had her on stream with me the other night to kind of get her used to it. She wants to do Comic-Cons. So same thing, like we can Comic-Con together first until she's comfortable. And then of course I run the business. So I'll send her the supplies and I'll pay for the table. And, it's all part of my business. It can get written off. And then she can get commission on anything she sells. But she's duplicating my footprint, right? So I'm here in Texas. I can only do so many, but she's in Michigan. So whole new market for us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I like that a lot because it's I think a lot of us that talk a lot for a living tend to discount how difficult that is. But if you're not used to either public speaking or carrying on a conversation, for 90 minutes or 60 minutes or 45 minutes, that can be really nerve wracking. And there's like the little nuances of it of like not talking over people and, trying to like lead into, trying to kind of toss some softballs out there that they can kind of hit and those types of things. And so it's interesting. So I'm kind of curious, as you are developing your team and doing that, is there kind of like is there a post-mortem where you're kind of doing like, hey, you did great with that, maybe next time like this type of thing? Or is it just mostly just some experience, or how are you doing that? Is it structured or is it kind of ad hoc?
Well, it depends on the person. The one that's really interested in being being on pods and duplicating the cons is my editor, Rachel. And she's wonderful at public speaking and she will ask for feedback. So she's like, I'm just new at it. I want to see how you pitch. I want to see how you spend the day at the table so I can take notes and we can do it together. And that's great to hear that. Someone who's actively trying to duplicate. But with her, it would be so easy to be like, okay, you take the next one and then tell me what you think. And then I can always be there to support and step in if they have questions that she doesn't know. But she's such a quick learner that it'd be like 2 times maybe at a con and she would be fine to do it on her own, But just to be available, like, hey, let me call her real quick and be like, what's the hot sauce in it, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, oh, scan the code. The QR code takes you to the website, has the list of ingredients, stuff like that, Just easy stuff. But yeah, there's usually a give and take between her and I that's natural. So that would be where I'm going to spend my time developing, right? As opposed to the guys that are like, I don't care. All right. You just listen.
It's
your time wisely.
It's interesting because what you said earlier about even when you're interviewing like artists or whatever, that's such a valuable skill that if you can go out and promote it, that's actually something that you're looking for, because it's almost the same with traditional publishing, where it's not that the whole idea used to be if you go with a publisher, they're going to promote this thing for you, and that's why you hire a publisher. But now it's like you have to do all this. They want you to do all the same stuff you would do if you're self-publishing. They want you to already have. On
my podcast that are with Image, I've had people on my podcast promoting they're with Scout. You still have to promote yourself these days. They might put you on the website. They might say this is coming, but they're not actively pushing out emails you have to send people to them. And that's what they expect.
Josh is doing that, with his, he's got a traditional publisher for his books, but he's still out there, hitting the pavement and everything.
Well, and the only kind of scenario, like, let me think of like, okay, so a guest that I would say that we've had that probably would be the exception would be one of the Fan Brothers, but they are in a scenario where when they put out books through like Simon & Schuster, that's the book they're like gonna gun behind, and even they have to do a lot of self-promotion. But it's like that's, you know, at that level of publishing where they're going to send the book rack to the bookstores and stuff like that with your book promoted and stuff. But it took them a while to get there, and still they still have to hustle. I always tell people, like, if Neil Gaiman has to travel the country doing conventions, like, why do we think we're special? It's like, that's Neil Gaiman. He's as big as you can get in comics.
Yes.
And he's doing interviews, shows, everything. And it's obviously important. And yeah, the other thing is the publishers are doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, a lot of the shipping and fulfillment. That's kind of the main thing. They're doing press, making sure you have a beautiful book, and shipping and fulfillment, and then maybe some marketing plans. But yeah, indie publishers are, you know, they don't have all the resources in the world, because I mean, we're all comics. Like, comics, the return on comics is not, you know, we're not Wall Street. So
right.
But I love what Laurie's talking about, because it kind of ties into what we talk about a lot on this show, with artists needing to think of themselves more like a business quite often when it comes to like working with clients and, you know, using contracts and stuff like that. And I love the idea of bringing just common sales tactics that aren't used in comics very often. And it is kind of surprising to me. It's surprising that it's so shocking, like the commission thing, for instance, to hear, because it's like, that shouldn't be. That's pretty common with sales. It's just like, for some reason in comics, like there's that weird exception. So I love that. But yeah, it is kind of kind of a tough one with publishers, because a lot of us, including myself, want to just make the art, and then everybody comes and goes, "Oh, it's amazing."
Leave me alone. Well, that's the hard part of all this. I mean, like, we've talked about some of the tactics behind. We haven't talked about how much time I spend in marketing versus writing.
Yeah, so that's a good question to kind of like go into. So how is that?
All of the time.
How do you get your writing time?
Well, it's a unique. I'm so far ahead in the story, right? So I've written I wrote this as a full-length movie. We split it up into 12 issues. We produced 1 through 4, now the trade paperback. So there's still 8 more issues. Oh, thank you. The Vegas glass. Isn't that cool? I know. I'm going to get a set for myself. It's like, I need this in my life, and I figured people would want it too. So because I'm so far into the story, like, the script is done for 12 and then 9 into the second arc. So there's not really any... I don't have to stop marketing to write and be creative. So I have time. I can take my time and continue the story. So I think that is one of my my bonus features. I'm going to try to look for a better word here. One of the advantages I have is because I can spend all that time marketing to get us moving, you know, issues 1, because we're new, right? We're 2 years into this. That's fairly new as a business, as a book, as, you know, a comic producer, a podcaster, all of that. I would still consider myself new. So I can spend all that time, but I spend all my time managing a team, marketing, building the next thing, planning out what's coming next, you know, building the team. All of that takes a lot of time. So if you're trying to write your story or produce art, you need to hire someone to do what I do. And they're out there. There's producers. So you could get a producer to manage your team, so that way you, Josh, can just go create, and someone that is your producer could manage the team, communicate with each other, talk about the expectation, deadlines, Kickstarter, when's the next one, you know what I mean? And they kind of run the back end of it while the creative team just gets to create.
So where would you find people that specialize in comics, as far as from a producer standpoint? I mean, when we think of producers, we think, oh, you know, producer like for film or whatever, but people that are going to, you know, do that for a comic book project, where are you finding these people?
I've only met one, to be honest with you. I don't know where you would find them, but I'm sure if we actively, because I do that for my own thing, so I wasn't actively looking. But I had a comic producer on my show on the Tuesday Brew, and I was like, this is great. I have so many questions for you. You know, like, what exactly you do? How do you do it? You know, why do you do it? Because she's like, I'm not artsy. I don't write. I'm not creative. I just love comic books. I like to read them. And that's the
Yeah.
best person to be a producer, because she can look at something and be like, you guys missed the mark. Go back and do it
Yeah,
again.
that's
It's almost like another
interesting.
set of eyes as
Yeah.
a consumer giving you feedback.
I think the other thing I like, Laurie, about everything you're describing is like, comic writers quite often will, do the promotion and stuff, but there are occasionally comic writers who don't realize like the quantity that an artist is taking on when they're choosing to do a comic
Yeah.
for somebody. And so I feel like the neat thing about seeing what you're putting in there is really like you are really putting in the writer's value as well in that, because not only are you doing that, you're compensating your artists, you're giving them commissions for pitching in, and you're also taking the bulk of the weight of the promotion. And it's like that's a real, like, in the team of comics, I think taking on that much is really incredible, and also shows like your value for like the other creatives in your team and space. And I just think that's again, it's just like that's a really, I'm curious if that's a conscious thing that you choose to do as a writer as well, like taking the extra. Obviously, it's your property too, so you're going to push it. But
Right.
is that like part of the thinking process too? Is just kind of like adding that to your workload to kind of fully contribute? I don't know if that I'm curious.
Yes.
Does that
Yes.
thinking come in?
Well, and there's a couple reasons why I wanted to be the promoter. As the writer, I understand all the ins and outs of the story
Yeah.
more than anybody else. And since
Oh, yeah.
it's my baby, it's my passion project, and no one is going to be as passionate about it as I am. My artists are
True.
wonderful and they love what we do, but when it comes to being on podcasts and being engaging and asking like the deep questions about Path of the Pale Rider, that's
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah.
we tag each other. It's important as a team to understand everybody's strengths, right? And this is my strength. So when they're done producing art, I tag in and I take over. And I
Yeah.
do my job and I work just as hard as they do to promote this thing, so that way we can continue to make indie comics.
That's
right?
perfect. Yeah.
And then when the campaign is over, get to work, guys. It's your job, right? Because then we have deadlines to meet and we have art to produce, and we want to make sure that we're making a high quality product. So we tag in, it's like a wrestling match. It's your turn, go get them. So, but that's important to know as a team,
Yeah.
what your strengths are as a team and who does what. And to talk about it. Communication is so important. So important, right? Everybody knows what their task is and how to contribute. So that way, as a team, you are successful. As a project, you are successful. So you
I
have
love
to
it.
have the communication.
On this note, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to drill in a little more. So you're ahead on your story, right?
Yeah.
But do you find having to juggle all this, like how do you, as a creative, make a space for the art part after all the, like, amid all the marketing? Because you guys are doing quite a lot of campaigns, quite a lot of production, I'd imagine, as well. So it's like, where do you find time to like get in that creative zone or space? Do you break it out? Like, do you do daily writing? I'm just kind of curious, like how you set aside time to like write, the next chunk or whatever, or is it fully written?
Well, I mean, the first arc 1 through 12 are fully written.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have to touch them. I have not touched them. They were written in 2018, and I broke them into issues the end of 2019. So they've been set for a while. I fiddled with it for, a good year and a half. I think it's pretty cohesive, and I haven't changed anything.
Okay.
When it comes to the next arc, I have to be in that creative headspace. A lot of times I'll go for walks by myself and I'll talk through the dialogue and I'll take notes on 3x5 cards and I'll rearrange things in the story until I think like it plays in my head the right way. Because I come from production, like film production, right? That's where I was. I was choreographing fight scenes and writing web episodes for a production company, blah, blah, blah. So that's how my brain kind of writes the story as I play it through in my head and I talk the dialogue out. And then it goes on to 3x5 cards. I rearrange until I think it's, good. And then I write it down and I rework it a few times. You know what I mean? First draft, second draft. But I usually do that at night. Like my kids are in bed. The dog is in his crate. He's ready for sleeping, and I can just dump it all onto paper. So I have to have that quiet time where I'm by myself. So it's obviously not when I'm campaigning. It's not when my Kickstarters are live. It's usually when they're working on art. I get to sit and work on the story because I don't have to be as active. I tag
That makes
them
perfect sense. So you kind of split it into like almost like relating it to film, like the blue sky period where you're kind of like creatively coming up with stuff and stuff like that. Then there's like the production mode, and then there's promotion and marketing and kind of splitting it apart. That's a smart way to approach it.
It gives me time to just, it's funny. You see those commercials where writers are looking out the window and they're like, I'm working. That's what it is. Like, we're coming up with new ideas. And like, even the other day, I came up with the how I want the last act to play out in my second arc. Because I got to a point, I had written to issue 9, and one of my characters is at kind of like a crossroads. And I was like, we could go this way or we could go this way. And I kind of explored both just to see like what's appealing. And I was like, well, how are we going to get to here, this final moment that I know I want my issue 12 in that arc to look like? So, but, I'm piecing things together. And just the other night I had like this epiphany. I'm like, this is how it happens. So sometimes you have to take a break from it. And like, I go back and I reread the story, revisit the headspace and kind of walk around as the characters and be that fly on the wall and see every perspective and then put it on paper and get it out. A lot of times it's just getting it out that's, feels so good. And then you can go back and tweak things and add things and foreshadow and fan payoff and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
There's an interesting thing with with what you're saying is it's a principle of creativity that they've studied and proven that in introducing a problem and then creating space before you and pushing on it, right? Mm-hmm. And then creating space before you try to solve it again actually increases your ability to try to solve it later. Because if you introduce a problem and then I'm guessing, and I'm kind of curious on this, I'm guessing that you are introducing periods of boredom in between there because
sometimes,
because what'll happen is during those periods of boredom when you're not doing like programmed time, your brain will start kind of clocking on the most pressing issue that you've got, and so that's why I think a lot of people struggle with creativity is because you can fill your entire life with entertainment and never have thoughts for yourself. And so if you've always got earbuds in, there's always music going, there's always audiobooks, there's always TVs, your second screening, whatever. But if you go on walks, if you lean up against a tree, if you do the dishes without listening to anything, and then you go back and try to do that, oftentimes you'll find that the creativity is drastically increased and the problems that you introduced prior to that stuff get solved.
Yes, because your brain is subconsciously solving the problems. I have two things that I find I am very creative after. That's walking the dog by myself. No phone, no earbuds, no nothing. Just walking around with the dog because, of course, he's not talking to me. And then I wake up from a sleep. You know what I mean? Like you wake up to go to the bathroom and then all of a sudden my brain is like, Path of the Pale Rider is doing this. And I'm like, why? But it answers all the questions. I'm like super creative when I'm half awake.
Yeah. I understand that. That's actually one of the reasons I have sleep issues sometimes too. Is like I'll be halfway to going to sleep and then the comic is just plaguing me. Like this evil weight that won't go away. But yeah, I think you're right. That is a good time for creative ideas, especially.
That's really interesting too, because the transition state from unconscious to conscious is a different state of thinking as well. That is awake but abstract, and we don't normally get that abstract during like pure awake time. And unconscious time, there's actually chemicals that are released when we wake up that try to erase all of the things that were going on. That's where you often forget dreams and stuff. But in that transition, you can actually tap into the unconscious, but I'm tapping into the unconscious abstract kind of nature of those things. Yeah, that's interesting too.
Such great ideas come out at that time. So even though I got to get up to go pee, I answer the world, world hunger. I figured it out.
There's this old, it reminds me of this old bit from Mitch Hedberg where he says he wakes up in the middle of the night, and he's a comedian if you're not familiar, but he wakes up in the middle of the night and gets an idea for a joke, and he has to either run and get a pencil or convince himself that what he thought of wasn't funny.
I guess it wasn't funny enough to write it down. Let's go back.
Who's
You know
the dude that does David Peterson that does Mouse Guard? He keeps a grease pencil and a piece of tile on a chain in the shower.
Yeah.
And so when he gets ideas in the shower, he will actually stop showering and start doing that.
Well, you don't even need that grease pencil, depending on your shower. If you've got a glass door, you just write it on the door.
On the door.
It's like getting all a beautiful mind in the shower.
Red strings running from here to there.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of reminds me though, like the creativity thing, you know, like even in like on productions and stuff, like the value of like a writer's room is exponential on like a show, because like people are on a tight deadline, but the idea of camaraderie and being able to kind of throw things back and forth and have a little bit of creative play ends up like allowing things to get done faster on a deadline. Whereas if you try to force it, you know, like especially like comedy, right? You try to force like 5 comedians in a room to just instantly make a joke without allowing for a little bit of play or laughter or like banter, it's not going to happen. But there's this magic that happens when you get that natural and kind of like almost not thinking about it too much thing going on, you know?
Yeah. Has anybody listened to John Cleese's lecture on creativity?
Oh, I love Cleese.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah. So you got to find it. It is so good. So after Python kind of broke up and started doing other things, he started studying creativity and he's like meeting with the neurologists and talking to the scientists and stuff. He has deep dived into that rabbit hole. Anyway, he was saying that that certain neurologists consider that the key to creativity is actually somebody's ability to withstand pulling the trigger on the answer longer than other people. And so so the first idea that we all come up with is going to be the same idea that everybody comes up with, because it's surface level and it comes out of the zeitgeist, right? And so it's going to be really cliche. It's going to be really boring, right? And so, yeah, right. And so he's saying that the most creative people are the ones that are willing to sit in that uncomfortable space long enough to actually get past the cliche and wrestle and play without having to pull the trigger on that. And it's interesting because there's only one type of person that is incapable of doing that, and it's the person who needs to feel like people respect him. Like they're usually men, the kind of machismo that are like, I need to be decisive and I need to make decisions quickly. And he was actually talking about, and he didn't name him, but he was talking about one of the other Pythons, and he was like, this guy on paper was significantly more talented than I was, but I came up with more creative ideas because I was willing to be wrong longer.
Knowing him, he was probably bashing Palin, and Palin's a genius. But anyhow, I'm just guessing it was.
Well, he said he's more talented and he's more gifted than I am, but I sat there longer than he did.
That's actually a really good point, though, because like you have to be pretty comfortable with being silly and kind of strange. I mean, even like bringing it back to Laurie, because I feel like we got on a side note. I got into it too.
But go ahead, I want to hear.
Oh, I was just gonna say like some of the premises in Laurie's comic, Laurie, you can touch on this. Go to kind of absurd levels, and to get there, you know, I'd imagine there must have been some ability to be comfortable with silly or absurd ideas. I don't know, Laurie, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, the world building aspect of it, where I took everything to like the nth degree. Where it's like, oh yeah, death is broken. What would that look like for eating meat? What would that look like for crop production? How would the government treat the undead? What kind of laws would they pass? What kind of chaos would happen? How would it affect men, women, children? Would it be the same depending on how they die? You know what I mean? So I just took everything, like so many branches out into the space, and just spent so much time thinking about all the different aspects of this world. Before I even wrote the story, it was just like, what would it look like to walk around in this world? What's interesting? about it since death is broken, and then work that into the story. But yeah, I spent a lot of time being wrong or being in the unknown, to come up with this. It's been a long time in that headspace.
Yeah.
Some of the interesting things that Corey was just talking about was how the brain works. I spent a lot of time researching how human brains function because of how the brain rots in the skull, and like how people will change because of depending on if they have damage to certain parts of their brain. There's other parts in the story where we start playing with memories and lighting up different parts of the brain using electrical stimulants. Which is a real thing. They call it deep brain electrical. Blah, blah,
It's got a
blah.
word. yeah.
You know what I mean?
My girlfriend runs a TMS clinic, and what that is it's brain stimulation for depression. So they actually put this basically this helmet on people, and then they kind of basically they're coaching them through their experience, and it's just
They
got
watch
this
how
little
the brain
tapping,
lights up.
and it connects the synapses, because the way she describes it is that depression is your brain is literally depressed, so getting those synapses firing again and everything. And it's got like a 75% success rate, which is more than any kind of medication or anything on the market. So it's crazy stuff.
But they will literally poke a metal pole into your brain while you're awake and put electrical shock through it to stimulate different parts of your brain. If you have amnesia, they can help recapture some of your memories by lighting up different parts of the brain. And they have done studies about how different emotions are captured in different parts of the brain. So you can bring back emotions based on fear, based on happiness, based on anxiety by lighting up different parts of the brain.
Yeah, that's
interesting, because it's like the playhead is broken, but the tape still has the information on it.
Yes.
Oh,
it's still in there somewhere, but you just have to shock the shit out of it to find it. But it's that kind of stuff. And like, how do we light up creativity in the brain? Can we find out where it is? You know what I mean? And then what if I could put on one of those caps?
I'm still bummed it's not actually left and right, because they used to talk about it being left and right, and they have this whole theory. Oh, that's why so many genius guitarists have been left-handed, because they were right-brained. Right. And then they debunked the whole left-right hemisphere thing with art like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and I was like, no.
And then the sales of what is it, drawing on the left or right side of the brain, kind of just
drawing.
But
I always love that idea.
It's still
but the
really interesting as a modality of talking about traits and types of thinking, but it's just not physically true.
And it is interesting because there is definitely a clear different modality. Like Corey was saying, the modalities are totally. I think a lot of the stuff about left versus right were right. Just the hemisphere part was wrong.
Right.
But exactly. But what was it I just listened to? This is totally a diversion, but it's just interesting and it's on this topic. It's they were talking about this. It's an old. I guess this is a classic around neuroscientists. There's this guy back in the day who was working on a railroad. Have you guys heard about this?
Yeah,
that's the dude who got the spike through his brain.
Yeah, so there's an accident.
Completely.
Yeah. It also severed his
spike goes through his eyeball, right? Like you guys have heard this more for our audience. It goes through his eyeball, through the iris, right? And just punctures all the way through the back of the brain. They still have a skull.
Didn't it sever his corpus callosum?
I think it got rid of his whole prefrontal cortex.
Shit.
Oh, the one I'm thinking of, it severed his corpus callosum, so the hemispheres couldn't talk to each other anymore. So he was firing both hemispheres were firing independently of each other.
Okay, so this one's crazy because this guy was like a church going, moral, happily married guy, stuff like that. The second that happened, it had happened so fast that it soldered itself. Like it burnt, cauterized the wound.
Yeah.
So he literally walked to the hospital and had them check it out with his crew, because he was the foreman. And I guess they, they looked at him and were like, well, I mean, you gotta, you're missing your frontal cortex, a big chunk of it is just gone. and it's on the wall behind where this thing happened, and I guess you just got to function. But the thing is, his personality completely changed. So like who he
Right.
was, like suddenly he was like this hard drinking, like gambling, like he would just be like profane and just cussing all the time, and like just like
Isn't that
and
crazy?
it's the first, I think it was the first scenario where people started realizing like, oh my gosh, like a lot of who you are is just what like
Right.
what's stored up there. But it's a fascinating story. Yeah.
So then back
Yeah.
to my story, when
Yes.
your brain starts rotting and then your loved one becomes someone else, and
Yeah.
you have to watch it happen.
Oh,
How
Yeah.
do you
that's-
deal with that? You know, as a family, as a
Yeah.
loved
Yeah, I
one.
mean, I guess you could, for
Serious
research, you could
point of
just
view.
compare it to like Alzheimer's patients or
I
things
did
like
a lot
that.
of
Yeah.
yes, I
Mhm.
studied Alzheimer's and dementia very much so, and the undead kind of mimic that, where at first they're themselves, and very quickly, I mean, depending on how they die, because of course, if they die of a brain trauma, they change immediately, right?
Yeah. Right.
Um, but as their brain kind of decomposes in their skull, they start losing their humanity. They just become forgetful or violent or vegetative. There's a scene in issue number 4. One of Jude's family members has passed, and she's in the bathroom waving at the mirror. This person won't tell me their name.
Hmm.
You know, and it's, you've seen, if you've experienced dementia, that's very common. You know,
Yeah.
where they switch, where they're very nice and sweet, and all of a sudden they swear at you and tell you, they call you all sorts of names and derogatory, can't remember who you are. So it's very sad. So, but again, you're dealing in my story with this giant population of people,
Yeah.
and how crazy that becomes very quickly when, you know, they start out as a minority and then become the majority. What do you do?
Mm.
How do you deal with that? It's a scary place.
That's amazing, and I love the fact that there's so many like real world things that, like, kind of like when Corey was talking about his story too, where it's like there's real world examples of things that you can kind of pull into build
Right.
a,
Yeah.
a richer world, you know, by studying things like that or listening to
By
like
studying history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because eventually the government decides that it is too dangerous for the undead to be in living communities. So they collect them and take them out of the living communities. Where do they go? They claim they're going to the undead retirement community, but no one ever sees them again. So people start hiding their loved ones in their house. And then the government creates an anonymous phone line. You can call it and say, my neighbor's got someone stashed in their house. And they send collectors to go get them. They'll go walk through your house and see, are you hiding someone? And if they're there, they take them.
Well, we all know what that comparison is.
Exactly. I mean, that history, right? But even the phone number, there's anonymous phone numbers now you can call in my state, you know, to report someone that you think has done something. You know what I mean? They're still here.
Right.
So
Right.
it's human history, and it's unfortunate that we are ugly to each other, but it's, you know, my story is based off of what people can do to each other, whether it's ugly or
Yeah.
out of love, or, you know, Jude's story is just different. You know, you'll see all sorts of things. And I like to keep it kind of gray. Like, I'll show you the things, and then you can make up your own opinion about how you would act in this world. I'm not preaching. I don't have an agenda. It's just like, this is what's going on. You can decide what you want.
I love it though. I love it. I think that's great. Yeah, and it's just such a rich world, and you've, you know, been on this show before too, talking about kind of the playground that you're playing in as a writer, and it's such a fun world that you've built. And again, I love the fact that you kind of like yes ended a question, you know, and that's kind of how this whole thing starts. It's like just this in a weird way, it just kind of starts with a silly question, like, okay, people don't die,
right?
Or
their bodies die.
What then?
Yeah, but then what happens when your soul doesn't go? There's no transition, there's no rest.
So good.
What does that look like? And it's not just people, it's everything. So people are still bringing up interesting things. Like because I've been posting those grim questions online where it's like, would you this or that? Would you, you know, would you eat a hamburger if it still moved? Would you smash her? No, she's a 10, but she's undead. She can remember your name, but she's kind of stinky. Would you, you know, stuff like that. So I keep posting questions about the world, and people are starting to think. Like someone's like, well, if I eat vegetables, do they continue to grow after I eat them? Am I going to poop out a tree? And I was like, no, you're not going to poop out a tree. Like, but I like that you're thinking, you know what I mean? And they're like, I don't want to drink the water either. And I'm like, oh, tell me more, you know? Someone was like, what about fungus? Would fungus just take over because everything is rotting? And I'm like, that's a great question. We're going to get there. Right?
Well,
We haven't
yeah,
talked
and,
about
and,
fungus
and the
yet.
key here is you're just getting those conversations going, and people, you know, talking about your property, and I mean that's when you do get these, whether it's something like these big phenomenons that happen, like with Lost or with the Game of Thrones or
Yeah.
Walking Dead. You know, it's that water cooler talk and stuff that people are genuinely interested because because it is such a rich world, and they're trying to figure all this stuff out, and that just begets more questions and people trying to answer that, and debates and all that stuff that's really building a community of a fan base for what you're doing. It's
And in
And that's
theory,
part
you
of the
want them to
marketing as
start getting
well.
so good at the feedback that you don't have to write it anymore. You just go with it. I'm making a joke about at George R.R. Martin's expense, but it's. I mean, it is kind of brilliant though, because there's a couple people among that Game of Thrones fan base that totally knew who Jon Snow was, right?
Yeah.
And it's
We all
it's
have
kind
I
of
think I
got to
have
be
predicted
fun.
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's got to be
Right,
fun
yeah.
to be the person who's right, in those
Yeah.
scenarios. It's always fun to be like, I knew it, or to be like, well, it wasn't my theory, but I like that. Yeah, I love that idea of building that fan base, Laurie. That's awesome.
I'm that jerk that goes to see a movie with you and figures it out in the first 5 minutes. And I'm like, he did it, and this is why. And I get up to go get popcorn, and you're like, what the hell, man?
Well, that's the situation that I hate to be in, because you don't want to ruin it for somebody, but you want people to know that you figured it
You're
out.
right.
And you can't just
Yeah.
say, you can't just wait and say, oh, I figured it out. Sometimes I probably would
sometimes
do
we'll
that,
write it down
but they won't
right?
believe you.
Right.
Oh, I
Sometimes
love
we'll
that idea.
and
Write it
hand
down.
to my husband.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't open it. Don't open
Yeah.
it until the end. I'm like,
So
but this is
every mystery movie you go to, you've got a little envelope with you and a pen.
But sometimes my husband's like, just tell me, I know you figured it out. And I'm like, this. And he's like, And I'm like, you watch.
Yeah.
I love that. Going to see a movie becomes the game of Clue, where you're like, I'm just going to put this in the envelope, and you open it at the
Colonel
end.
mustard in the room with the candlestick. Put it on the piece of paper. See if I'm right. It's funny.
I love it.
We've got a lot of people asking
Sorry, Dom.
questions in the chat here.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk
Let's
about
see.
the Path of the Pale Rider.
Well, they're just kind of would you rather. I don't know if they're specific to Path of the Pale Rider, but stuff like rather have badly burned fingers or badly frostbitten fingers.
So I have a question about the moving hamburger.
Yeah.
How is it moving? Like, I understand that death isn't over, but there's if I have separated the brain from the muscle, then how is the muscle getting the electric stimulus to move?
Where does your soul end and your body begin?
Yeah.
Because
so you're saying that
dead, but it's still animated. How?
So
Where does the
physically,
energy come from?
yeah, physically it would be the neural system, right?
Physically, yeah.
Right. So you're saying that part of the soul or the spirit is infused in everything. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're a pile of bones, are you still here? Maybe you can't move, but what does that do?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Where does your energy go if it can't leave?
Yeah.
Pile of
I love
ashes and
that.
you're still here?
Yeah.
Mhm.
We'll get there in the story. I promise you we will answer all the
Yeah.
questions. But yeah,
So-
I wouldn't say it's moving, like it's not crawling like inchworm.
Sure, but it'll undulate.
But it's
right.
like, yeah, it's still kind of pulsing or undulating.
And so is there a critical mass of molecules that is necessary to retain part of the soul? Because like as I decay and fall apart, right? I'm becoming yeah. No, but I mean if I can cut the hindquarters of a cow down and it still moves, how little of a thing can I cut off or flake off or whatever that still retains some of that spirit, some of that soul?
It's all you.
Yeah, I don't know about Laurie's story, but my my zombies have kind of a similar, kind of reimagining where they're regenerative. So like if you cut off a thumb or a finger, eventually that whole thing would regenerate and you have a whole nother, like a clone of that person.
Like starfish,
In my
starfish
story.
zombies.
That's why, and part of this
Hydra.
was problem solving, because I didn't want kids necessarily going around with guns and hacking people up and stuff like that, because it's kind of a kids thing. So to circumvent that, of like, if you do that, that's not a good thing, because then you've got two of these things.
Grow back.
So to reset them, basically they can't really be killed, but like blunt force trauma to the head will kind of will temporarily put them like in a state of like unconsciousness or sleep, but then they'll start to regenerate, and for a moment or two they'll look like they're good, but then they start to deteriorate again. So it's a kind of a similar thing. We've kind of taken the zombie genre and added our own deviations to it.
You're going to see some pretty crazy stuff, Corey. We have characters that are just a head.
That's awesome.
So he's hilarious because he's kind of like my what you would call it. He's comic relief, and he's a head. So it's like they call him a hat rack, and they make fun of him. All right,
Nice.
But he still talks. He's cut off below the vocal cord, so he can still talk.
That's awesome.
But yeah, you might see like a hand going, stuff like that. But everything's animated, even down to like the smallest bit. It's still you. And then we have some really interesting places in the story called the Valley of Bones, where all it is just like the undead are kind of like drawn there for whatever reason. And we'll explore what that place is, and the consequences of a soul with no mass. What does that do? Do we have ghosts?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have poltergeists? Do we have supernatural activity? I don't know. We'll have to get there.
I love it. And I love that all of these questions just kind of arise out of the plot that can kind of drive the story further and further, which I think is that's a good sign of like a spark that you can work with. I think that's beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. But it's fun. It's fun. And we get to explore more. It's like these questions that everybody asks. It's like, oh, I've thought of that. We'll get to it in issue 12, like, oh, I thought of that. That's in issue 20. You know what I mean? Where it's like, we didn't explore mushrooms. We didn't explore the Valley of Bones. We didn't, but we will, it goes there. So it's fun. Life is in the blood, meaning the blood carries the life force. Presumably then, as long as the body part has blood in it, it has energy to move. Interesting. But are your bones not part of you?
Yeah. Now we're going to get into deep philosophy of just like, what is you? This is like, we're going to solve selfhood on this show.
Yeah, when you get into things like this, and I see this with what Corey's currently doing with his story, there are just so many ways you can go, and sometimes it's intimidating because you get into these things and then you're like, it's just a rabbit hole, and like, well, if this that's like for me, like time travel, I don't know if I would ever do a time travel story like what Corey's doing. Because it's just like
mine's not travel.
Well, it's not time travel, right? But
I specifically stayed away from travel for those reasons.
Yeah.
But I am going to be doing a time travel thing.
You are.
Corey and I, because we're mentally brothers, like we're
psychically linked.
We're psychically linked. We always work on projects that kind of magically tie in with each other.
Isn't that funny? There are people like that in my world too, where it's like, I'm doing this. Oh, so am I. But I released mine first.
Yeah. What's weird with Corey is he'll be like reading a book on a subject, and it's like the same thing. We're doing the same thing.
That's funny.
We're deep diving down the same rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It's very strange. Yeah.
Do you ever find yourself researching things that you're like, I know I'm on the FBI list now?
Right? Yeah.
I know I'm on the FBI. I'm sorry.
I had to
say, whoever's watching me right now, I'm a writer. I swear to God.
It's interesting because because I'll do like an artist, kind of like not to the extent that you're doing, but with the book that you showed, I do these. I didn't do one for the last issues because they didn't really sell that well, but I was doing these artist editions where it was very hand done, hand put together, mini comic versions of each one of my issues. And on the second issue, there's a scene where the kids are in a treehouse, and you spoiled alert, there's a guy who we assume is responsible for the outbreak, who ends up hanging himself off of this treehouse. So the mini comic had like this trap door of this treehouse, and then it was kind of as a kind of a binding around the front. I wanted to have like a little noose there. So I researched how to tie a noose, and the next thing I'm getting is like suicide prevention hotline things. And, yeah.
Are you okay? Reach out to those that
Dedication.
Yeah, like being an art director too. Prior when I was an art director, explaining to IT, just like, look, like we're an art team, so we're doing research to draw stuff. Weird stuff's gonna pop up because we're always like, you're always looking up weird stuff. And another good example for this current book I'm working on, it's like there's a skeleton, like a life-size skeleton that Robert Browning had purchased. And he did like painting and drawings and stuff, and and it's historical fiction. It's this bit where he's like doing a dance with the skeleton, and oh no! I just matter of fact, like my wife and her sister lives with us, and she's an artist too, and we're weird artists. So I just randomly about to buy a human-sized skeleton to use as reference, and she's like, "Oh, I've got one in my car." And so we go to her car, and we're like lugging a skeleton. And so I took a picture and posted it on Instagram. Like, this is only an art family would be doing this, and it's my wife and I like taping a skeleton like in position with my son like playing next to us and stuff. And it's like, yeah, only artists like would ever be in a scenario like that, or reference photos too. I'm sure you guys, I'm sure Scott, Corey, I'm sure we all have like a bunch of reference photos that we posed for that if somebody looked at, they didn't know we're an artist, they'd just be like, this guy's a lunatic.
This guy takes terrible selfies.
Yeah. What is this about? Going through your camera roll, like, I don't know about this guy. My NSA experience, I'm sure, is when I was researching flammable gases that would explode.
Oh yeah.
But also smell sweet for a specific reason. So the gas had to smell, and it had to have a certain medical property to it, but would also explode. So I'm sure, like, you're just like, welcome to the terrorist watch list, and you're like, I'm a reader.
Yeah, you always got to take copious notes because you got to, if you ever have to go to court, you're like,
that's true.
Like,
I've got a book. It's on Kickstarter. I'm not crazy.
Please read my book.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, and I brought extra copies of my trade paperback to court today.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I never thought of that because I haven't done a lot of action stuff, and I've had to look up weird stuff. But then thinking about it, like with action stuff, like you're looking up like ammo, like weapons, like it's definitely that is funny. I never even really considered.
My poor artist, because I write fight scenes because I used to choreograph fight scenes, right? So I'm like, backhand speed punch, and then she's gonna parry and then thrust in, and then the knife's gonna go here, and then she's gonna roll into the thing and pick this up and like shoot the guy, and then and he's just like, Laurie. Like, when I can't get all that on, we're not doing 12 panels on this page, okay? What's important? Like, give me a big move that I can show that's like conveys all the action. I'm like, that takes half the fun out of it, man. So we are back and forth arguing about choreographing fight scenes where he's just like, take it out, man. And I'm like, no, we want it. It's cool. Put it in.
That is interesting. I'd also imagine there's got to be times where you're like looking at something and being like, nope, can't. I mean, it looks cool, but that just could not happen. Like,
all the time where I'm looking at other people's fights and I'm like, no, that can't happen. Like, this is, I mean, unless it's like superhero or like, fantasy where I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, he has superpowers, whatever. But it's like superhero, like, I'm like, she can't punch that hard. She's 5'1". Like, I know she can't do that. Like, try again, guys. Like, she doesn't have powers. I'm like, I'm taller than she is. I can't punch that guy out. I know. Like, stuff like that. Like, that would never work. Those pressure points aren't real. This thing will not kill you if you push it up in the brain. No, doesn't work. Doesn't work. not real.
Yeah, I know
I love that.
when I reach stuff, because I mean I'm into horror and all that stuff, but as long as I know it's fake. But sometimes when I'm researching and I do certain things and I'm doing like Google image search and like real, like if a real accident scene comes up, I'm just like, I just can't
Yeah.
I can't deal with that if it's and so I have to be super cautious when I'm looking at certain things.
Not me.
That
I'm like,
was
Yeah, that I know some people are like that, but not me.
Zoom.
that was really funny when I had surgery in my collarbone. And
Oh.
we were off the air, and I was about to show them. I was like, "Hey, check out these stitches!"
Oh,
and
both Scott and I are not.
both
Yeah.
Scott and Josh were
We're
like,
like
"No,
the weirdest
no,
guys,
no,
yeah.
ah!"
Because
so
most
weird.
guys I know are like totally
Yeah.
all about it.
I'll be
They
like,
just be
"Show
like,
the story."
blood, whatever. I'm like, for me, I'm like,
Put it
wound.
up on the big screen. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I
go
can't
ahead, I
watch
want to
people getting
lean
a
in.
needle.
I want to see.
So I'll never be
Yeah.
a heroin addict. I know that.
Yeah, you're like, I can't do the needle.
I can still. This will probably gross these two out, but if I
They
move my
won't.
arm a certain way,
Oh no,
you can see the titanium through the skin. Like you
Oh.
can see
Really?
the outline. Yeah.
that's kind of cool.
So
Great. After
I've
the
got.
show, I need to see it. After
All
the
right, I'll show you. Yeah, I've got 6 inches and 7 screws in there. So
That's amazing. I feel like you need to now lie to your students and say that you're made of adamantium.
right.
$6 million man.
Just be like,
$8 million man,
right
right?
there.
$6 million man.
Million, yeah. Which is I think they have
We
to
can
update that for
rebuild it.
inflation if they ever do a remake. But
I know it used to
Right.
be the $6 billion man.
Yeah, $6 million is like a week in the hospital.
I
That's-
know. Like, oh, that happened last week. The one titanium thing. That's all you get for $6 million.
right. Yeah.
Like, this metal plate right here was $5 million.
Oh man.
And that's how they'll reboot it. Is at the beginning, it'll be like you can't be like he's like I'm the $6 million man. They're like you can't be, and he's like what? And they're like in this economy. Eh.
Yeah.
You're like, actually, you're in bankruptcy at this moment.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
We're medically bankrupt. That's
Yeah,
We're
the
coming up on
Matlock
our hour and a half.
crossover.
Oh, I was
oh,
gonna
are
say,
we really?
Yeah. So, but
That was
I
fun.
so basically at this time, I usually want to figure out if there's anything that you wanted to touch on throughout our whole conversation that maybe you didn't get in, or anything you wanted to mention. I mean, obviously, besides promoting the thing, which we'll do in a minute, but if there's anything else that you wanted to get across, whether it's story wise or anything like that we neglected to talk about, let us know. Otherwise, we'll just start wrapping things up.
Not really story wise, but on the campaign, there's two things I wanted to mention. Like, make sure that you scroll down to where it says the extras and shenanigans. Because
Okay.
we didn't talk about all like the riddles and the short films and all the extra things that we do. We do quite a bit of extra stuff where you get to interact with the world. So there's the comic book, which is the meat and potatoes of the story. Perfectly, you can choose your own level of involvement on these, but if you want to do more and fall down that rabbit hole, the riddles, you get to interact with the world like it's real. And then the fan interactive short films, I have spots where you can participate and you can see yourself be a part of the world as well. I'm still filming the fourth one because I have actors acting. I have actual actors and I don't have to do it myself, which makes me happy. But then the scheduling takes a little bit longer. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that there is international shipping on this one. It's not through the Kickstarter, but if you go down to on the left side, you see all the menu. There says a note to international and Canadian backers or Canadian and international backers. I forget which way I put it. But there's a link in there to ASAP Imagination website called the Laurie Calcaterra collection. And you can get a physical copy in the UK and Australia, the Netherlands, Canada. And they will fulfill it from ASAP Imagination, which means that the shipping will 9 times out of 10 be less expensive than if I shipped it to you from Texas.
Oh,
Okay,
how great!
after the show, I may, or when I get ready to run my campaign, I may have to reach out to you because that's always the international shipping. And if you found a solution to that, especially like I hear some people don't even ship to the UK anymore because of their, it's just a nightmare.
Well, that and there's like a whole nother tax system called VAT tax. So you have to apply
that's what I'm
for
talking
a tax
about.
number, and it expires every 3 months, so you have to keep paying for it.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's like 17.5%.
It's
like-
insane
it's
how much
crazy.
it is.
Yeah.
So
And it sucks too because like it hurts both you and the
Everybody.
customer because the customer ends up having to pay more. It's just not fun. So if there's a better solution for that would be cool to hear.
And I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I kind of, it's depending on the size of your book, which I know the size of this particular book. It's not a single issue, but I know, there's, I mean, you could have it printed digital. This may be what you're doing, what you're talking about, but like if I mean, you could put like a book on Amazon KDP, have Amazon print it and ship it, and they're going to get it free shipping, through Prime, no matter where they are, because they've got facilities all over the world, of course. And so that's one way to do it. But if you're dealing with like single issues, it's a little different story. But
ASAP Imagination is the publisher of this trade paperback, and they are located in the UK, and they have a branch. They have a branch in Canada as well.
Okay.
So it's basically I'm tripling my footprint as well for this trade paperback.
Awesome. Okay.
Hell
Cool.
yeah.
I mean, just full of knowledge and full of just, awesome like hacks and advice, as long as you take them. It's not always easy. I mean, to do what Laurie's doing to promote this thing and actually schedule find the different podcasts, actually schedule it out, promote it, and actually put in the work. I mean, it's not easy, but there's the blueprint right there. She's kind of laid it out for you. So
yeah. And I am very free with my knowledge. I'm happy to talk about it. I have a show, Tuesday Morning Brew. You can come on and promote yourself on my show as well. But if you want to send me a message, a lot of times when I have time, don't do it right now, please. But when I have time, I'm very happy to chat with you about how, to schedule and how to plan for a Kickstarter. I don't mind, and I don't charge for that. So maybe I should.
Yeah.
Together.
Yeah.
I could probably
I've done coaching comic creators and companies and things like that too, so I mean it's another there's certain things. It's not like if somebody has a question, I'm going to go, oh, you got to pay me, but if somebody wants in depth, like in depth,
but I could even just do like, these are the 10 steps you need to do to promote your Kickstarter, and I'd be like, if you want access to this, $. I don't know. I've never done it before. I'm not going to do that right now.
Right.
I want to make sure I can track my success, and when, you know what I mean? 4 Kickstarters is great. 5 Kickstarters is great. 12 Kickstarters, that's different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
20 Kickstarters, that's different. But like 4 Kickstarters, I'm still new at this game. I have a lot of tips and tricks, but I have to keep going and doing my thing. And I just want to make books. Honestly, I just want to make my damn book.
Yeah,
that's
I don't
right.
want any drama. I don't want any indie drama. I don't want any of the nonsense. I just want to stay in my own lane and make my book. I want to talk about it with like-minded people like you guys right here. We have a blast, and we can talk about the ins and outs of the business and have a fun time doing it. Like, I never thought I'd be on a podcast where someone's like, we have to punch babies in the face for a specific reason.
It's a very valid reason.
Yeah.
You guys have to find out. Yeah, honestly, I think also you guys all out there, if you're listening, obviously support Laurie. If you haven't bought Path of the Pale Rider yet, I think we've all read at least one of the issues, and like it's a good story. It's a good world. It's really well drawn, well executed. The Kickstarter's up right now. Enjoy this beautiful advice while you're getting it as well for free. And since you're getting it for free, you might as well, kick in and help out Laurie, like in her path to ride or path to make the Pale Rider ride. So go forth and do it. I don't know. I was trying something.
I mean, you see the little ticker thing at the bottom, but that's not clickable. But there is a clickable link in the description of this video.
Yes.
Just go there and click on that.
And we have a short link. It's just www.pale-rider.com.
That's easy to
Super
remember.
short, and that will take you here as well. And by the way, Gary, thank you so much for following me. And yes, when you start streaming again, let me know, man. I'll be there so we can hang out and chat.
Cool.
100%.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hanging out
Everybody.
with Gary in another week or so. So
Thank you for your support, everybody that's backed or followed or shared, or just come to hang out, in Artcasters. Everybody okay?
I think so. I don't know whose end that was on.
That was mine.
You crashed? Did you crash your keyboard? Hate it when that happens.
All right. So yeah, anything
Anything is appreciated.
anything else we didn't mention? I mean, just go to the link. I think that sums it all. You've heard about the story. I mean, obviously, if you're not intrigued at this point, I don't know what to say, but
Oh, wait. You had a plushie. You had a plushie that you
I
haven't
do.
shown yet. Yeah, you got to show this
Yeah, I
plushie.
showed him.
Oh, you did show him. Okay, then never mind. Okay, then we're good.
It's so bizarre because he's so ugly, and I you know what? It cracks me up the fascination with this character, Big James, because he's so gnarly and just not nice, and he's just a force of nature. And if you ever meet him on the road, you're dead, right? There's no getting away from him unless you trip your friend, pretty much. But people love him, and they want him on everything. And my kids want this ugly Big James. Ugly Big James. The kids want him. Like my colorist Matt Chambers, he's like, if you got any left of those, my kid wants one. And I was like,
I love it.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, I'm sure there's going to come a time where you're at a convention and somebody comes rolling up with their stroller with a little baby and a little James plushie.
Ugly bear plushie. Half his face is gone. But they're like, I want that. I'm like, okay. So like, God bless you. I was a weird kid like that too. I wanted the zombie thing, so I can't judge. But I'm just like, really? Okay. I love it. Everyone, go to the Kickstarter. Just kidding.
All right. Yeah. So everyone follow. Basically just go to the Kickstarter and there's a link in the description. Check it out, contribute to it, and you're going to get an awesome project. I've read part of it, and I've got to get caught up. So definitely check it out. Let's see. Let's start with Josh then. Josh, what about you? Anything you got to promote?
Yeah, so just check out my YouTube, where I have been also lately refurbing guitars as well. So if you're kind of curious how to like refret a guitar neck and stuff like that, you can check that out. But I'm also doing comics and stuff on there occasionally. And then also check out my 2 graphic novels, Jacob's Apartment and 2 Stories, if you're into cool indie stuff that gives you the cred with your friends. It's like the cool artsy indie stuff, you know, that Klausian type stuff. So anyhow, all right. Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay. Corey.
Yeah. So if you want to find out what would happen if you could watch somebody that you're dating slip 20 or 30 years into the future, and then you get to decide whether you want to put up with that or not, and then go read my story. And it's available at coreykerr.com/email. And I've got 2 of those scenes out now. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the newsletter on there. And I'm doing stuff on YouTube as well.
Okay, yeah. And as far as me, you're on my channel. But the other things, in addition to these Artcasters episodes that you can find on my channel and Josh and Corey's, which I'll talk about in just a second. But there's other information, or there's other videos on here. There's my series, Making Comics 101. It's the most comprehensive course on how to make comics for free anywhere. So far that's uncontested. I don't have anyone challenging me on that. So it's fact right now as far as I'm concerned. In addition to that, you can also find what I'm doing currently, which is if you're a nostalgia buff, if you're into like old cool stuff you had as a kid from the 70s, 80s, or 90s, I'm taking a lot of that stuff and kind of looking at it, reverse engineering it, recreating it, but putting my own spin on it. Real fun videos, so definitely check those out. I also have a website, circworks.com, where I've got digital products to help you create comics. I've got prints. I've got all kinds of cool stuff there too. So definitely check all that stuff out. And like I mentioned, the Artcasters show, we do this every single week, but it does rotate from Josh's channel to my channel to Corey's channel, not necessarily in that order. It gets a little confusing, but if you don't want to be confused, if you want to know when the episode's going to be out, whose channel is going to be on, who the guest is going to be on, what the topic, all that stuff, just join our mailing list. There's a link in the description of this video. You click on that, you join our mailing list, and you will be usually about 30 minutes before we go live. We send out a newsletter, and we don't spam you or anything. All it does is tell you when we're going to go live, so you're in the know, because who knows if YouTube is going to notify you or not. So yeah, I want to thank Laurie. I want to thank the chat, and I guess we'll kind of go out with the intro again. So
yeah,
well, let's ride this thing. Yeah, let's ride this thing out with a little Axl Rose, and we'll see you guys next week.
This one goes out to the Artcasters. Ooh, Artcasters! I say you're casting your spell, Artcasters. Casting your spell. Ooh, you're gonna cast that spell. Strike a hell. Whoa!